She was alone in the freezing dark, her shelter buried, her child swept away by the storm. Her people passed by, too afraid to help. They called it hopeless. But then, a human heard the cries. A stranger, from another world. And while the storm howled and death crept closer, he ran into the blizzard, not for glory, not for orders, but for a child that wasn't even his. This is the story of what happens when humanity sees suffering, and refuses to walk away. The storm came without warning. Not the kind that rumbled with thunder or sparked lightning across the horizon. No, this was a different breed. The sky turned a sickly green, then gray, then black. The wind tore across the plains like a wounded beast, howling with a rage born of ancient winters. Snow slammed against the domes of the outpost, thick and fast, drowning the world in white. Velna clutched her daughter to her chest. The child was barely past her third cycle, small, fragile, warm. She shivered violently, pressed beneath the tattered remnants of thermal fabric that once lined their shelter. Then the roof gave way. A sheet of ice cracked through the support beam, collapsing the eastern section of the dome. Velna screamed, shielding her daughter as debris rained down. Cold air surged in, biting like claws. The storm didn't knock, it invaded with no mercy, no restraint. She ran. Half-blind, soaked in frost, she stumbled across the snowfields that had once been the outpost gardens. Now they were just uneven pits of powder, the corpses of alien plants buried beneath. Around her, lights flickered, other families, other domes, shattered, dark, silenced. She screamed for help. No one came. Her people, once proud and unified, were scattered, broken. The elders had sealed the core dome when the winds began. No signals were answered. The outpost's main generator had failed. Communications were dead. The perimeter drones lay buried under a meter of snow. And in her arms, her daughter was going still. Velna knelt beneath a fractured solar panel. The metal frame groaned above her, but she had no other shelter. Her breath came fast and shallow, clouding in the air. She unwrapped the layers of cloth, checking her child's face. Blue. The color should have been pink, lively, flushed. But now, her daughter's cheeks were tinged with frost. No, Velna whimpered. She pressed the child against her chest, praying her own body heat would be enough. She whispered old lullabies. She sobbed apologies. She looked toward the main dome, toward the heat, the light, the people hiding inside. And they just watched. Through the frost-covered barrier, eyes stared out. Faces of her kind. Her neighbors. Her kin. None opened the door. They watched as she fell to her knees, cradling her child. They watched as the wind howled louder. They turned away. Kane wasn't supposed to be there. His ship had taken damage 3 systems back. Micrometeoroid cluster tore a hole through the secondary thrusters. Emergency jump landed him on the frozen moon they now called Jaren 6. He'd called for recovery, but the nearest UEC patrol wasn't due for another day. So he waited. The auxiliary power kept the cockpit warm. Rations would last a week. The storm outside was brutal, but his reinforced hull held. Kane leaned back in his chair, trying to sleep. And then, he heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A sharp, static-laced burst of noise over the emergency channel, low band, barely a whisper. It wasn't a distress beacon. It wasn't even a clean transmission. But the signal was human in pattern. 3 short bursts, a pause, 2 long ones. Help. Kane bolted upright. He scanned frequencies, enhanced audio, looped the signal. Then he heard it again, fainter but clearer. A voice. Not human. A mother. Begging. My child, please, anyone. He didn't wait. He threw on the insulated suit, loaded his pack with medgel, heat capsules, and power cells. The storm was hell, but he'd survived worse. The coordinates pinged less than 2 kilometers east. It took him almost an hour to reach the signal source. Visibility was 10 meters. The snow stung his faceplate like gravel. He tripped twice, once falling hard into a drift that nearly buried him. But he kept going. And then, he saw movement. A flicker beneath a metal awning. He stumbled closer. She was curled in the snow, wrapped around a small, unmoving form. Her skin was violet, lips nearly black with cold. Her eyes were glazed but open. She didn't flinch as he approached. Hey, I've got you, Kane said through the speaker. She didn't respond. He knelt beside her, checking the child. Barely a pulse. Frostbite along the fingers. No time to ask permission. Kane injected medgel into the child's shoulder, then a warming agent. He wrapped the girl in his emergency heating shell. She needs warmth now, he muttered. He turned to the mother. Can you walk? No answer. Her eyes followed his movements, but her body wouldn't move. He lifted her carefully, slinging her over his shoulder, child secured in his arms. The wind fought him the whole way back. But Kane was stronger. The inside of the ship was a lifeline. He set the mother down on the medcot, activating autoscan. No major fractures, vitals weak but stable. He turned his attention to the child. The pulse strengthened with each passing second. Her color returned slowly, painfully, like warmth creeping back into frozen skin. Kane didn't sleep. He monitored them for hours. The mother finally stirred 12 hours later. Her voice was rough. Where? You're safe, Kane said. I found you in the storm. I'm human, Sergeant Kane Arlo, UEC Recon. This is my ship. She blinked at him. My daughter. Stable. She's alive. A tear slid down her cheek. I thought I lost her. You almost did. She sat up slowly. Her body ached. Her skin bore the pale marks of early frostbite. But she was alive. Kane handed her water. She took it with trembling hands. I am Velna. He nodded. You're lucky I picked up your signal. Nobody else responded. Her face twisted. They saw. No one came. He said nothing. Just tightened his jaw. I don't understand, he said. Weren't they your people? They were. But fear makes cowards of us all. She looked down at her hands. My child was born in that outpost. Her father died during construction, equipment failure. Since then, they look at me like I carry death. Kane didn't argue. He'd seen it before. Isolation broke things inside people. Fear twisted logic. He sat beside her. You're safe now. Storm's dying down. Once calm's clear, I'll call in a transport. You and your daughter, Velmi, right? Yes. You'll come with me. She looked at him sharply. To your world. To a better place than here. The UEC has refugee programs. Medical aid. You won't be left in the cold again. Her eyes glistened. But why? Kane shrugged. Because no one else did. Velmi woke 2 days later. Kane greeted her with a smile and a ration bar shaped like a fish. She giggled, her first sound in days. Velna watched from the corner, unsure of what to say. Kane didn't need words. He treated the child like she belonged. Played games on a holopad, taught her a clumsy earth song. Velmir laughed when he got the notes wrong. Later, Velna approached him quietly. She likes you. Kane smiled. She's brave. Like her mother. Velna's gaze softened. Do all humans care this much? He looked at her. Not all. Just the good ones. The storm broke 5 days later. The sun, pale and distant, pierced the clouds for the first time. Kane stood outside the ship, scanning the horizon. In the distance, figures moved. Rescue. The real kind. Not the watchers behind the walls. He turned back toward the ship, toward Velna and her child. He knew he couldn't make them forget what happened in the cold. But he could make sure they never had to face it alone again. And for him, that was enough. Velna stared out the viewport at the melting snow, watching the once frozen world shed its armor. Thin rivulets of water traced paths down the blackened remnants of her outpost. Metal structures bowed and broken under the weight of a storm none of them had truly survived. Not inside. Beside her, Velmi pressed her face to the glass, fogging it with her warm breath. She was smiling. The first time Velna had seen her smile since her mate died. Since the cold nearly took her. Kane watched from across the control cabin, arms folded. He said nothing, just gave them space like always. Ever since the rescue crews had come, things had shifted. Not between them, yet, but in the quiet, in the way she looked at him. In the way Velmi clung to him, now more than she ever had to her own people. Maybe that was the part that hurt most. The outpost elders had issued no apology. No public address. They gave her a medical voucher, 3 days of warmth, and a shuttle ticket to another colony. When Velna refused it, their cold glances returned. You were reckless, one of them said, as if losing her child would have been the safer path. Kane had stepped in before she could answer, before her voice cracked from fury. She almost died, he said flatly. You watched it happen. The elder had left without another word. Velna had expected Kane to lecture them, or demand answers. But he didn't. He just packed his gear and told her quietly. You're coming with me. If you want to. She hadn't answered then. But now, days later, as she watched her child laugh again, her answer began to take shape. The transport ship was larger than any vessel Velna had seen up close. UEC Standard Issue, matte gray with twin-engine boosters and modular crew bays. Kane handled the boarding codes, his voice calm over the comm. The crew barely glanced at her or Velmi, just nodded, as if she belonged already. Inside, warmth spread evenly through the corridors. Lights glowed a soft amber. The scent of metal, oil, and synthetic air reminded her of her outpost, but here it felt alive. Maintained. Cared for. Velmi climbed into the lower bunk and giggled as the mattress flexed beneath her. Kane tossed her a blanket. You ever been in space, kid? Velmi shook her head. Keep your eyes on the port window when we jump, he said. You'll see stars fold. Velna watched him carefully. You have no bondmates, she said. Kane shrugged. Nope. No child. None I know of. And still you chose to risk your life for mine? His face didn't shift, but something behind his eyes turned quiet. I've seen people left behind before, he said. I wasn't going to let it happen again. Velna wanted to ask what he meant, but she didn't press. Not yet. Instead, she sat beside him as the ship hummed to life, as the stars bent and blurred outside the window. Velmi squealed as the jump hit, weightless for a heartbeat. And Velna, for the first time in weeks, allowed herself to breathe. The UEC outpost on EOS 4 wasn't paradise, but it was real. 3 domes nestled along a cliffside above an aquifer, each filled with structured, clean-lined buildings, fusion cores, hydroponic farms. Human children played in the walkways between habitat pods. Drones buzzed overhead, delivering meals and tools. No one stared at Velna when she stepped onto the platform. No one shunned Velmi. Kane led them through registration, quiet, efficient. The clerk gave Velna a temporary ID, a work slot in data mapping, and a living unit beside Kane's. Not with him. Just nearby. He made sure she had the choice. That night, Velna sat beside a fabricated stove, stirring soup from processed roots and protein extract. Velmi was curled in a synthetic hammock, eyes drooping. She calls you her second father, Velna said. Kane, leaning against the wall, smiled faintly. She's got good taste. You speak to her with more kindness than most speak to their own blood. I was raised to believe that love isn't something you earn, it's something you give. Velna tilted her head. Strange. That sounds like something my own ancestors once believed. Before we buried such things in tradition and fear. Kane turned to her fully. She's not just your future. She's everyone's. That's why I couldn't let her die. Velna felt something shift in her chest, like frost melting where it had lived too long. Weeks passed. Velna found rhythm in work. The humans respected efficiency, but not at the cost of compassion. When she struggled with a system interface, a technician stayed late to explain. When Velmi scraped her knee during a game, a nurse cradled her like family. She never felt judged. One evening, as Kane repaired a power module outside her unit, Velna stepped into the twilight air. The sun dipped low over EOS 4's twin peaks, casting gold across the valley. Kane, she said quietly. He turned. I do not know what kind of world you hope to build. But if it is made of what you've shown us, I think it's a world worth protecting. Kane set down his tool. I don't know what I'm building either, he admitted. But I know what I won't accept anymore. Watching good people get abandoned. Watching children freeze while leaders do nothing. That world can burn. Velna stepped closer. Her voice softened. You saved her. You saved me. Kane held her gaze. You don't owe me anything. I know, she said. But what if I want to give something back anyway? He hesitated. Then start by staying. A year passed. Velna became a lead systems analyst for the EOS 4 mapping grid. Velmi grew strong, faster than other children her age, her hybrid physiology adapting to Earth-standard gravity with surprising ease. She spoke 3 languages now, played with human and alien children alike. And Kane? He stayed close. Always. He helped train recruits, taught young settler survival tactics, repaired systems no one else wanted to touch. He never asked for thanks. But everyone gave it to him anyway. He became part of them. Velna and Kane shared meals often, sometimes laughter, sometimes silence. One night, Velmi fell asleep in Kane's arms during a storm warning drill. When he tucked her into her bed, she murmured, I love you, Dad, half asleep. Velna watched from the doorway. Kane met her eyes. She said it first. Velna nodded, voice quiet. She meant it. He crossed the room slowly. And you? He asked. She didn't answer with words. She leaned in and rested her forehead against his chest, one hand curling into the fabric of his shirt, the other over his heartbeat. And Kane simply held her, as if the world had always been made for this moment. Trouble came again, not a storm, but something colder. A UEC patrol ship arrived with a cargo of refugees from a failed Colony 3 systems east. Among them, Velna saw familiar faces. Elders. Outpost guards. The very people who turned away as she begged for her child's life. Now they were the ones begging. Their systems had collapsed, starvation, raids, internal betrayal. They were broken. Fractured. Kane stood at the edge of the landing bay, arms folded. Velna approached him, Velmi beside her. One of the elders, his name lost to her, staggered forward. I remember you, he said. You were from our sector. You had the child. Velna said nothing. Kane did. She survived. Unlike your empathy. The elder flinched. We were afraid, he said. We thought. You thought wrong, Kane snapped. You left them to die. Velna touched Kane's arm gently. She's watching, she said, glancing at Velmi. Kane looked down at the child, silent, wide-eyed. He exhaled. We're not like them, he said softly. We don't turn away. Velna stepped forward. She looked the elder in the eyes. You may be welcomed here. But know this, your place is not beside us. Not until you prove you've changed. The elder nodded slowly. Velna walked away, Velmi's hand in hers. Kane followed. Later that night, Velna and Kane stood beneath the stars. She looked up, at constellations unfamiliar yet comforting. Velmi slept nearby, curled beneath a starlight lamp. This world, Velna whispered. It tried to kill me. It didn't, Kane said. You did. He smiled faintly. No, I lived. You survived. She turned to him. Then what does that make us now? Kane's voice was low. It makes us the proof that humanity isn't just a species. It's a choice. Velna stepped into his arms. And there, in the warmth they built together, shelter stronger than any outpost, they finally stopped running. From fear. From the past. From the cold. Together, they had found something no storm could bury. Hope.